presume, Pacho, you'll just participate in the Q&A, or do you want to also make another presentation? Yeah, I thought so. Be clear. So we'll begin with, I'll introduce each of the speakers, and then we'll begin and have them present in the order in the program. Raya Karduova is the president of the Foundation for Tolerance International in Kyrgyzstan, and has been the GPAC regional representative in Central Asia. I won't say more of these introductions, of course, they're in your program. Max Boone is an associate fellow at the ICCT, International Center for Counterterrorism in The Hague. And of course, he himself experienced the horrors of terrorism in the 2009 Jakarta attack at the Marriott Hotel. And he'll tell us about the role of victims in the struggle against violent extremism. And then Gaborona is the International Legal Director for Human Rights First and the former legal advisor for the ICCR in Geneva. So let me now just turn it over to Raya.
Actually, my presentation will be about my Central Asian region. And I usually say the 5 countries of Central Asia all finish on stans. It's Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. And I would like to say just a few words about the findings from our interviews, from our research, which we hasn't finished yet, but we have some information. By the way, this research was made thanks to GPPAC support. We made the research on why there are more and more young people, and especially women, in Central Asian region being involved in the radicalist religious movements. So, new alarming trends in Central Asia. It's adverse impact of the war on terror on the human rights situation. Central Asian governments are using the fight against extremism and terrorism as an excuse to restrict civil liberties and repress opposition movements. And I just would like to mention that our 5 states are former post-Soviet Union states, and the regimes in our region, the political regimes, are not friendly towards civil society organizations, especially in the countries like Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan. If economic and political reforms in Central Asian countries, what people say during our interviews, are not successful and internal and border conflicts arise, the region could be a breeding ground for terrorism, site of political and religious extremism, and arena for international violent conflicts. I just would like to mention that between the 3 countries, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, we do not have political borders. We have only admin borders, and we are still in the process of delimitation and demarcation of our borders, and there is huge conflicts because of sharing of transborder rivers. There are pretty many disputable lands, pastures, and so on. As a rule, radical Islam appears in those countries where positions of Orthodox Islam are weak and where freedom of conscience is limited by the ruling regime. During Soviet 70-year time, religion was oppressed by the Bolsheviks. And that's why today, when there is huge desire of the population, to turn to religion, Islam is becoming a very conflicting area, because some people claim that this is the right Islam, some other people claim no, this is the right Islam, and that's why there is huge tension even within Islam in Central Asia. Security services in each state increase repressions and their influence, suppress political institutions and processes, and thereby strengthen people's support of extremism groups. Reasons of extremism support in Central Asia. Opinions from interviews. Decreased opportunities for expressing political dissent, make people join extremist movements. Distrust to governments make people think that terrorists and extremists are victims of government violence. Suppression of individual freedoms by the government only increases popularity of radicalism and extremism. Dissemination of religious extremism ideas is encouraged by lack of trust to official authorities who do not live up to people's expectations. Using terrorism by official authorities as an excuse. Governmental authorities intentionally increase danger of terrorism to switch people's attention from dissatisfaction by real reasons of situation worsening to the problem of terrorism and extremism. Just a small example. When we asked women, what concerns you, the most women from these very poor areas, they said, I'm afraid that my son could be caught by police. And then I'm never sure that my son come back home healthy. And when we asked about extremism and terrorism, because our police agencies, talk a lot about this problem on the cross-border areas, these women said, no, we never heard about extremism and terrorism. So that's the big difference between how the government institutions perceive this problem and how the local people perceive it. Governmental authorities exaggerate danger of Hizb ut-Tahrir. It's a religious political organization illegal in Central Asian countries in order to justify implementation of restrictions for individual rights or to get donor support. And we must say that international community talks about terrorism and extremism more than Central Asian citizens. Again, it's very strange. So for ordinary people, somehow this is not a problem, but for government official institutions, it is a problem, and donors supporting financially, fighting terrorism and extremism, somehow creates a pretty strange situation in the region. Governmental repressions as the reasons of extremism. The existing corrupt governments are afraid of people's punishment, and therefore they aspire to retain power by any means. Dissatisfaction of population is caused by government actions and not by actions of terrorists. These are opinions from the interviews. Therefore, sometimes for changing the situation, it is necessary to struggle against authoritarian and corrupted governments which overuse power, but not against so-called terrorists and extremists. Well, and I just would like, because our topic is the role of civil society, I would like to talk about 3 groups. We as civil society organizations and my NGO, Foundation for Tolerance International, work with to somehow prevent radicalism and extremism. Religious leaders in Central Asian region, women's groups, and youth. Why religious leaders? Because they are considered to be the driving forces for radicalism and extremism. In June, bloody events which happened in Kyrgyzstan, the ethnic clash between the Kyrgyz and Uzbeks in 2010, some religious leaders were considered to be one of the initiators of these events, of this clash. In the mosques, they actually mobilized some fighting groups. And now religious leaders are really very strongly watched by the law enforcement institutions, by the secret services, and they really have a difficult time today. And when civil society would like to work with the religious leaders, because the situation today is, de jure, the heads of our regions are governors, mayors, and so on, appointed by the presidents or prime ministers. But de facto, religious leaders are the ones who actually can direct people to this action or to that action. And that's why when we really would like to build peace, to prevent conflict, we understand that we need to work with the religious leaders. But we cannot do it as civil society organizations, because then we may be considered by the law enforcement institutions that we are supporting the potential extremists, and radicalisms. Nevertheless, we work with them, and we bring our police, to our workshops, and we try for them to set up some communication channels, to see each other not as enemies, but as potential partners. Second, youth groups. What happened, as Kyrgyzstan, we had 2 revolutions, and of course, after each revolution there was looting, and these young people, were actively involved in this looting. We found out that there were so many young people involved in these actions, and when the police caught some of them, we found out that in Kyrgyzstan we had so many projects and programs, but none of these young people were involved, in these programs. So the question was, what's wrong with this? There are so many youth programs, in the country. How did it happen that these young people are not part of all these many activities? And we found out that we, civil society organizations and donors, prefer working with so-called nice young people who write nice essays, who are community leaders. They can sing well, dance well, but look, they are not with Kalashnikov during these conflict times. And then the question is there is something really wrong in what we do, how we do, and with whom we work. The same with women. When we had bloody conflicts, ethnic conflicts, we found out that these women who are considered to be community leaders, they didn't want to work in these bloody events. Different women, came and supported, but they were not the women, who we trained. They were not the women, who participated in our workshops. But we have another group of women, and we peacemakers, we know that women could be different. And there is a special group in our post-Soviet countries, especially in Kyrgyzstan, called OBON, which means Team of Women of Special Purpose. These women, because they are paid, they can easily organize pickets, demonstrations, hunger strikes, and so on. Second, they can oppress, the political or business partners. For special price, they are ready to be beaten, at these events. And these women are much stronger than the ones who we train at our activities. So what I would like to say, we talked about human security, we talked about conflict prevention and so on. And actually we talk about people. We need to question ourselves again and again. Trainings, workshops, conferences, are these activities are still appropriate? Because they're drivers for conflict. These people, they don't, I just cannot imagine that these, the young people who made lootings, would like to participate at our conferences. They wanted something different. And we cannot present this different. We're still in the same track. And I think we need to think very deeply and very honestly. Do we do what is convenient for us and easy?
Here, here.
Thank you.